In the shadows of history, wrapped in the mantle of night and the echoes of the forbidden, lie the most feared gods of the Aztec pantheon. These were not gods who offered comfort or promises of redemption. They were powerful and ruthless entities that demanded absolute devotion, ritually marked by the blood of mortals. For the Aztecs, life was a fragile line hanging over an abyss of chaos, an abyss that could only be appeased with dark offerings and ceremonies honoring these cruel gods. These gods did not only embody natural forces or abstract aspects of the universe, they represented the darkest depths of the human soul, the most primitive emotions, and the most fundamental struggles of existence. At the heart of their worship lay a terrifying truth. Life and death, creation and destruction were perpetually intertwined, and maintaining the cosmic balance required human offerings. The rituals performed in their name were acts of both devotion and desperation, designed to appease forces that could destroy both the individual and the community if not properly honored. Today, as we unveil the veil that covers the gnosis of these Aztec gods, we delve into a world where the sacred and the macabre meet. Prepare yourselves for a journey through the mysteries and terrors of the cruelest gods of the Aztecs, whose stories and rituals reveal a side of humanity rarely exposed to the light. Before we begin, we must say that the content of this video is not suitable for sensitive individuals. If you think you might feel uncomfortable or affected, we recommend not continuing. If you decide to proceed, let's begin. Huitzilopochtli, whose name means hummingbird of the south, is one of the most prominent and feared figures in the Aztec pantheon. This god embodied the force of the sun and the fury of war, being the patron of the Mexica, the ethnic group that later founded the Aztec Empire. For the Mexica, Huitzilopochtli was not just a protective god, but also a guide to greatness. Although this greatness came with a terrible price: human sacrifice. According to Aztec mythology, Huitzilopochtli was miraculously conceived by Tezcatlipoca, the earth goddess, who became pregnant after a ball of feathers fell on her chest. This conception immortalized Huitzilopochtli as a deity destined for greatness, but his birth was marked by conflict and violence. Tezcatlipoca's other children, horrified by this inexplicable pregnancy, decided to take her life to preserve their honor. However, at the moment Huitzilopochtli was born, he emerged fully armed and, with supernatural strength, defeated his siblings, including his sister Coyolxauhqui, who was thrown from the top of a mountain. This violent act not only established Huitzilopochtli as the god of war, but also as the guardian of the sun, an entity that needed to be constantly fed with mortal offerings to maintain its strength and ensure its journey across the sky. For the Aztecs, each sunrise was a victory of Huitzilopochtli over the forces of darkness, a daily battle that could only be won with dark ritual ceremonies. The most important ritual in honor of Huitzilopochtli was the Tezcatlipoca ceremony, held during the eponymous month of the Aztec calendar. In this ritual, a war prisoner was selected to represent the god on earth for a year. This individual, known as Xipe, lived with all the privileges of a noble, but his ultimate fate was the end of his life on the altar. On the last day of Tezcatl, the Xipe was taken to the Templo Mayor, where, before a crowd of spectators, his heart was offered to the god in a macabre spectacle. Additionally, you can imagine what they did with his flesh. This ritual not only served to maintain Huitzilopochtli's power, but also to reinforce the authority of the Mexica, who saw themselves as the chosen people of the god. In a world where war was constant and death omnipresent, Huitzilopochtli offered the promise of victory, but that victory required a constant series of offerings. Tezcatlipoca, whose name translates as smoking mirror, is one of the most complex and terrifying deities in the Aztec pantheon. God of the night, sorcery, discord, and war, Tezcatlipoca was known for his capricious and cruel nature, a god who could bring both prosperity and ruin to those who worshipped him. In his hand, he always carried an obsidian mirror through which he could see everything happening in the world. This mirror not only allowed him to observe the fate of men, but also reflected the darkest truths of the universe, truths that often drove those who dared to contemplate them to madness. The cult of Tezcatlipoca was deeply rooted in fear and uncertainty. Unlike other gods who could be appeased with regular offerings, Tezcatlipoca demanded constant devotion, as any mistake in his worship could result in disaster. It was believed that this god had the power to manipulate the fate of men, leading them to greatness or destruction according to his will. This absolute power over human destiny made Tezcatlipoca feared and respected, but also deeply hated, as his influence was unpredictable and often cruel. One of the most important rituals in honor of Tezcatlipoca was the Tezcatl ceremony, which, like in the case of Huitzilopochtli, involved the taking of an Xipe's life. However, the process was even more sinister. For an entire year, Tezcatlipoca's Xipe lived as the god on earth, carrying the obsidian mirror and receiving the people's adoration. This man, chosen for his beauty and physical perfection, symbolized the embodiment of Tezcatlipoca, and his destiny was sealed from the moment he was selected. On the final day of the ceremony, the Xipe was taken to an altar where he had to break the obsidian mirror, a symbolic act representing the destruction of his own life and the total surrender of his being to Tezcatlipoca. Afterwards, his heart was offered to the god, who, according to belief, consumed it to obtain his vital force. This rite not only served to maintain Tezcatlipoca's power, but also to remind people of the fragility of life and the fleeting nature of human power. Tezcatlipoca was also associated with the concept of nahualism, the belief in the ability of humans to transform into animals or spirits through magic. It was said that Tezcatlipoca could take any form, from a jaguar to a coyote, and that those who managed to connect with his power could acquire supernatural abilities. However, this gift came with a terrible price, as the Nahuales were condemned to serve Tezcatlipoca for the rest of their lives, and any betrayal of the god would result in a violent and premature death. The figure of Tezcatlipoca is a representation of the dual nature of the Aztec universe, where the sacred and the profane, the good and the bad, were inseparably intertwined. Through his mirror, Tezcatlipoca not only reflected reality, but also distorted it, revealing the shadows lurking in every corner of the world and in every human heart. In the dark and cold realm of Mictlán, the Aztec underworld, reigns Mictlantecuhtli, the god of death and the lord of the dead. His domain is not one of peace, but of shadows, silence, and decay. Mictlantecuhtli is one of the most terrifying figures in the Aztec pantheon, depicted as a skeleton or cadaverous figure, with skin clinging to his bones and surrounded by emblems of death, such as skulls and crossed bones. His appearance reflects his nature, relentless, immutable, and eternally present in the lives of mortals, for in the end, all roads lead to Mictlán. Mictlán was the final destination for most of the dead, a shadowy place full of challenges where the soul of the deceased had to traverse 9 different levels before being able to rest. Each level was plagued with dangers and trials, such as mountains that came together to crush travelers or a river of blood that had to be crossed with the help of a dog. Mictlantecuhtli and his wife, Mictlantecuhtli, ruled over this realm and decided the final fate of the souls that arrived there. Although Mictlantecuhtli was not a god who demanded offerings as frequently as Huitzilopochtli or Tezcatlipoca, he was worshipped through blood offerings and other rituals to ensure a safe passage to the underworld. One of the best-known rituals was the offering of animals, especially dogs, which were believed to accompany and guide souls on their journey through Mictlán. These dogs were buried alongside their owners to ensure they could cross the river of blood and reach their final destination. Mictlantecuhtli was also honored during the Day of the Dead festival, a tradition deeply rooted in pre-Hispanic customs. During this festival, it was believed that the dead could temporarily return to the world of the living, and altars were prepared with offerings of food, flowers, and other items to receive them. Although the festival has evolved over time, the fear and respect for Mictlantecuhtli and the power of death remain present in Mexican culture. The terror associated with Mictlantecuhtli stems not only from his appearance or his domain, but also from the inevitability of his power. No matter how powerful, rich, or virtuous mortals were in life, all, without exception, were destined to meet Mictlantecuhtli in death. This god did not offer redemption or eternal punishment. He simply offered the cold reality of the end, a constant reminder of the fragility of human existence. In the heights of the mountains and the depths of storm clouds dwells Tlaloc, the god of rain, storms, and fertility. But do not be deceived by his association with life and growth. Tlaloc is also a god of destruction, capable of unleashing his fury in the form of floods, thunderstorms, and devastating droughts. The Aztecs lived in a precarious balance with nature, and Tlaloc was the embodiment of this balance, a god who could bring both abundance and ruin with the change of a wind. Tlaloc was especially revered at the top of the Templo Mayor in Tenochtitlan, sharing the temple with Huitzilopochtli. While Huitzilopochtli required offerings to keep the sun on its course, Tlaloc demanded ritual offerings to ensure rain and fertility of the land. Without Tlaloc's rain, crops would die, hunger would spread, and the Aztec civilization would collapse. For this reason, the ritual offerings to Tlaloc were perhaps the most terrifying and cruel of all. The offering of infants was a central part of the cult of Tlaloc. It was believed that the tears of children attracted rain, so the youngest were selected to be offered to this god during ceremonies in his honor. Atop the mountains, where Tlaloc was believed to reside, children were taken and offered to the god. Their ritual, accompanied by cries and tears, was considered a direct plea to the god to send the rains that would ensure the survival of the people. The ritual to Tlaloc, known as Atlcahualo, was a horrifying spectacle. The children, dressed in costumes resembling Tlaloc, were taken in procession to the altars where they would be offered as a sacrifice. This was a desperate attempt to appease the god and secure his favor. If the offering was accepted, Tlaloc would send the rain. If not, he could send droughts or storms that would devastate the crops. The dual nature of Tlaloc, both as a giver of life and destruction, made him one of the most feared and respected gods of the Aztec pantheon. His power over the elements placed him in a position of supreme importance, and his favor was sought with offerings and prayers, while his wrath was feared with every dark cloud that appeared on the horizon. Xipe Totec, known as Our Lord the Flayed One, is one of the most enigmatic and terrifying gods of Aztec mythology. Associated with fertility, renewal, and war, Xipe Totec is a god of contrasts, a being who represents both life and death, creation and destruction, all through the process of renewal symbolized by the flayed skin. The cult of Xipe Totec was centered around the rite of Tezcatlipoca, one of the most macabre rituals of the Aztec religion. During this ritual, the victims were sacrificed, and the same was done to them as a snake when it sheds its skin, so we can get an idea. This became a sacred mantle, a symbol of the transition from one season to another, from death to life. This ritual reflected the Aztec belief that life had to be renewed through these rites. Just as a snake's skin must be changed for the animal to grow, human life and the fertility of the land required a similar act of renewal. Human offerings to Xipe Totec were not only a tribute to the god, but also an attempt to ensure the continuous cycle of life and death, a cycle that guaranteed the survival of the community. This process, however, was not just a physical act. It had profound spiritual significance. The act of removing the skin represented the removal of impurities, the transformation of the old into the new, and the preparation of the soul for its rebirth. The priests who wore these skins not only became symbols of Xipe Totec, but also embodied the renewal process that the god represented. The Aztec gods teach us a harsh and profound truth. Life is inextricably linked to death, and the cosmic balance that sustains the world is as fragile as it is powerful. Through their ceremonies of devotion, the Aztecs recognized that everything in life has a cost, and that fertility, victory, and peace must be constantly earned. These rituals, though terrifying, reflect a deep understanding of the transient nature of existence and the need to honor both light and darkness. The story of these gods invites us to reflect on our own lives, to value every moment, and to recognize that our own offerings, whether of time, energy, or love, are what maintain our personal balance. Ultimately, these myths remind us that we are part of an eternal balance between the opposing forces that shape our world. If you want to delve even deeper into the mysteries and esoteric knowledge, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more revealing content. Until next time.